Wild Ones. Welcome back to the Wild Rose podcast. I'm Whitney Rose.
And I'm Connie Daniels.
And today we are in the Wild Wild West. It is spring weather, but it is snowing.
Yes.
I'm channeling
spring
I know
colors.
Connie's channeling the spring, but our
I
guest,
kept my winter.
who I'm so excited to introduce, today we have a phenomenal, amazing plastic surgeon, good friend of mine. We have been waiting to get Dr. Nicolas Howland on our podcast for quite some time. You may or may not know him from the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City when my augmentation became famous.
It's true.
But no, I met...
I'm excited for the seasons where they're like, what happened? Where did they go?
You know, no one really knows yet. So I guess this is the introduction right now. No, we're so excited to have you today. You are a very dynamic, very intelligent, smart, kind, amazing human being. And you've not only you were my doctor. I met you through the medical, through plastic surgery, but then you became a good friend of Justin and I because you're such an amazing person.
No, you guys are sweethearts. That's such a kind introduction.
Yes.
Thank you.
So welcome to the Wild West.
I'm stoked to be here.
Should we just dive right in? Do you have any wild moments from the week that you want to share? Or should we just dive in?
Wild moments from the week.
What was your wildest moment?
I'll tell you a crazy thought that I had this morning. This is just, I don't know, just out of the blue. I was walking I go for a walk every morning. And if I'm operating, I have to get up at 4:30 to do this walk.
Wow. Outdoor walk?
Mm-hmm. Yep, 45 minutes
matter what.
outside, no matter what.
Are you doing 75 hard?
I did last year.
Okay.
So if you were to see me a year ago, you would not recognize me.
Really?
You knew me before all this kind of glow up transformation I had. But yeah, I'm 60 pounds lighter than I was a year ago today. 75 hard was part of that. Mm-hmm. And that outside walk was probably like one of the biggest things I took and continued with it. So if I'm operating, it's 4:30 a.m. for the walk. And if I'm not operating, it's 6 a.m. But it's every day, and it's like my little meditation time.
Nice.
And I feel like I have these huge breakthroughs all the time when I'm just on this walk by myself. And so this morning, I was actually talking to a buddy on Marco Polo. That's the other thing I'll do on these walks is I'll catch up on my Marco Polos because I don't have time throughout the rest of the day to do it. And there's an old mantra that surgeons use, and it's the enemy of good is better. Have you guys heard that before?
I haven't.
Have you ever heard that? It's like
I've heard someone similar.
It's like a very surgeon-focused mentality. You get trained.
Wait, say it again.
If the enemy of good is better. So when you're learning to be a surgeon, you'll be operating and be like, oh, I want to put in one more stitch, or I want to take this down and put it back together. And that's when mistakes start to happen because you try and get too perfect. You try and finesse it too much. And as I'm telling him this, I'm like, that makes sense surgically, but what a shitty mantra for life.
Right.
Like to just be like, oh, I'm good. I don't need to be better. And I actually realized, I think that I, for years, kind of let that seep into my life, where I finished this intense residency program, became a plastic surgeon, and then for the first 5 years of my practice, I was like, well, this is good enough. and didn't push harder for more, for doing more. And only in the last year did I realize that I really needed to work on myself and I needed to be better. And so while in surgery, that might be a great thing for life. God, no.
Not great mantra for lifetime.
No.
There's always more. There's always better. But it's fascinating because on the beauty side, on the flip side of it, I actually do think that mantra applies when it comes to aesthetics, filler, Botox, this need to always be perfect. When something, I've been trying to change my relationship with beautiful. What does that mean? Right? Because being beautiful is a feeling from inside, and that should be good enough. But as women, it's well, this is good, but it could be better. My lips could turn up just a little bit more, or they could be a little fuller on the bottom.
Yeah. I think, yeah, don't get me wrong. I think there's a very important lesson in life that we all have to learn, which is I have enough. And too many times in life, we constantly feel like we don't have enough. And it's, I'm reading this book called The Psychology of Money, and he talks about this in one of the chapters, and he gives examples of guys who, like, it was never, ever enough for them, right? Like Bernie Madoff, before he was this Ponzi scheme guy, was worth millions of dollars, and he had a very successful hedge fund company, trading company that made hundreds of millions of dollars. He was one of the most successful brokers of all time, but it wasn't enough. And so he created this Ponzi scheme that lost everything because it wasn't enough. So, no, I think we got to get to a point in life where we can look at ourselves, whether it's beauty, money, family, anything, and say, I have enough. But I think that that's separate from wanting to improve. Mm-hmm. And so improving and more, I think, are different.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to the whole saying of, if you're not happy with what you have, you're not going to be happy with more. You know, like if you can't find happiness in your life now, how are you going to be happy just with more things or, more vacations or whatever it is?
No, never.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your walks and like those meditations and that time that you spend feeling alone, is that what helped contribute to you finding this feeling of enough and like being content with good?
That's a huge part of it. Absolutely. Let's see. Let's just tell the whole story.
Yeah, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Let's
go
tell the whole
all
story.
the way back.
Okay, so I over the last year, like I said, I've had this big kind of change in my life that has been dramatic. And if anybody has followed me on social media or has known me before this, you've definitely seen it. So I was in a relationship for 3 years where we lived together. We were engaged. We were blending the families, and I was not happy. And I don't think the kids were happy. I don't think she was happy, but we were trying to just put a square peg in a round hole and make it work. And it was me. Like I was not in a good place, and I was not a good person. And we went to this on this 40th birthday party trip to Napa with a bunch of friends, and I had several friends kind of pull me aside and be like, "Hey, you just don't seem happy. You don't seem like yourself." And I knew that. I wasn't happy, but I had already been divorced. I wasn't going to put my kids through another breakup. And I had kind of told myself, you know what? I'm just going to push through this and make this work no matter what. And I don't want to rock this boat. And that trip was the first time that I realized that other people saw it, and other people saw that I was unhappy. And we came back from that trip, and literally within a week we were broken up. And that was a really hard time and a hard breakup. I was like, that put me at kind of rock bottom.
How long had you two been together?
3 years.
3 years.
And I remember, I'm going to share with you guys more than I probably should in this podcast. I remember calling a friend of mine and just saying, "Hey man, I just calling to let you know, like I broke up, and I'm gonna need a short-term rental that I can stay in until these guys find a new place, because we lived in a home that I owned, but I wasn't gonna just kick them out on the street, and I wasn't also gonna try and stay there while we were going through this breakup. So I said, I'll move out. I'll go to a short-term place until you can figure something out, and then come back." And he said, "Okay, well, where are you going tonight?" And I said, I rented a hotel, and I'm going to go stay in a hotel. And he's like hell you are. We've got another buddy in town down here. You're going to come down, and we're going to spend the night together, and we're going to hang out.
It's a good friend.
A really good friend.
Good friend.
Honestly, a friend who saved my life. Like I would have, I know that my life was saved that night. That's kind of where I was at. And we spent this really great night, the three of us just kind of bonding and talking and realizing that Nick's got to make some changes in his life or it's not going to go well. And my friend, Jimmy Rex is his name. We've been buddies since 6th grade. He's a well-known guy here in Utah. He had put together this men's group called We Are the They. And
I've seen this.
Mm-hmm,
You guys do some really cool things.
It's really amazing. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea behind the group is it's a community for men to learn how to live in integrity. Mm-hmm. For men to have a space where they can be vulnerable, where they can connect with other men, and where they can grow and become the best fathers, the best husbands, the best leaders. And it's such a need in the world right now. I think Jimmy is a genius for foreseeing the need for it, because my story is not unique. Like, there are thousands and thousands of men struggling silently, being unhappy, whether it's in a relationship they're unhappy with or a job they're unhappy with, and not knowing what to do because they don't have a community. Mm-hmm. Like, women, you guys have always had these great communities to go.
For whatever reason, women are much
it is
better
easier
at
for
this.
women to seek out help or be vulnerable and talk about feelings.
Absolutely. And guys just, God bless them.
Just stuff
they
it
don't
down
know how
in.
to do it. Yeah, we're told for years that that's not the manly thing to do. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you right now, the new 2020s, the new masculinity is vulnerability. And
I love that.
And that's part of what this group has been. It's super necessary. And so he had started this group before, like in the fall beforehand. And so we had talked about, well, maybe we can like backdoor you in and we'll let you join late. And he ended up deciding about a month after this night that we had together to open a second group of the group. So I'm part of what we call like leadership group 2 within this men's group. And but from that night on, I started working on me. And it's been I unbalanced myself. So sometimes in life, if we want to make radical change in one area, we have to purposefully unbalance ourselves in that area. And like if we're trying to create a new business and grow this new business from the ground up, sometimes you've got to put most of your eggs in that business where you're taking time away from maybe family and other things in order to really focus on that one area. And so for me, I focused all of my energy for almost a year on just me, growing me. And being part of this group has helped immensely. We do these quarterly retreats where Jimmy will bring in speakers. The guys will open up and talk to each other. We usually do something crazy and dangerous to help get ourselves out of our comfort zones. But I have seen men's lives change just as dramatically as mine, all in a span of a few months, just because they're opening up, getting vulnerable, and most importantly, living with integrity. So becoming what we call a free man, where you're not bound by lies that you've told yourself.
We need to send our husbands to this.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've actually mentioned this to Ben already. I'm like, hey, look at what Jimmy's doing here. You need to go.
Because it's actually so profound, because you don't even realize that men just have never been taught how to have that space. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Society teaches men to stuff it all in, work, be strong.
Yeah.
And don't be vulnerable. Don't feel.
Yeah.
So you have a podcast.
I do. It's called The Naked Patient.
The Naked Patient. I was honored to be a guest a while back, and you were talking about your journey, and something so profound that you said to me was that you were struggling at that time you were figuring out how to be alone, how just to be with yourself. How's that going?
Good. But I say that cautiously because I have also started, while I'm doing well at being alone, I also am in a new relationship, which I am really enjoying and leaning into. And it's the first relationship since before I was married that I have been completely transparent, in integrity, and honest. And I had this realization, I don't know, a month or two ago, where I had always looked at my past relationships as though the person I was with was the problem, right? Like, oh, this was the problem with my ex-wife when our marriage didn't work out. This was the problem with my next relationship. She was crazy. This girl was abusive. This girl was toxic.
Gosh, how many of us do that though?
Yeah.
Point the finger. Like it's so much easier to see that in someone else than to look inward.
Yeah, and I realized this relationship right now is so good because it was me. It was me the whole time. And I finally worked on and fixed who I was. And so now, like, I'm loving it. It's incredible. And I hope that shouldn't detract from the amazing person that she is, Haley. She's phenomenal. But I don't think I would appreciate that as much had I not fixed me before all of this.
Well, I loved congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I met her at Halloween, right? Yeah.
Whitney, real quick, do you know what this is reminding me of? Remember our podcast we did? How do you know if you're the toxic one?
Yeah. How do you know if you're the problem?
How do you know if you're the problem?
You always are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I wanted to tie back to, because I mean, obviously I'm married, been married for 13 years, have 2 kids, but like one of the biggest things that I've been trying to work on right now is during my meditations, or like if I'm overwhelmed and feel like any sort of sad, loneliness, overwhelmed, whatever, the fear, worry, like I've been trying to sit with it and really dive in, like, where is this coming from and how can I get rid of it? And I took a lot of like what we talked about on your podcast with that, like you have to be okay with being yourself, with being in your skin, and you have to allow yourself to go through that. And Connie and I spend hours talking about these kind of things. But like, what is your biggest advice? Like, how did you go from, feeling like you were aside from the program, like what's your number one takeaway of like something that our listeners could do daily, like one daily practice or one thought or one thing?
One daily practice I would say would be to spend at least 30 to 45 minutes by yourself. And you can call it whatever you want, okay? I think that's, some people get turned off by the word meditation because they just picture you sitting, in a lotus position and humming and calling in the universe, which is fine. That's a beautiful way to meditate for a lot of people. For me, my meditation is walking outside for 45 minutes. But just spending a little bit of time, I love it at the start of the day because it makes the whole day go better. But if you can't do that, do it at the end of the day. Do it in the middle of the day. But find some time that's just for you to sit with yourself and commit yourself to just being honest with yourself. Like, try to make it all about you. Don't bring in negative energy. Don't try to blame anybody for anything. Don't try to be upset that you're depressed or upset that you're angry. Like you were saying, where is this coming from? Just be. And you can start to and be honest, and you can start to really dive into, okay, there is anger here. Let's dive down into why. Or just be present with yourself. That is such a huge change. That's made such a huge impact in my life, is having that time.
What kind of language, or like what do you use or what do you do to show yourself love? Aside from taking the time for yourself, like, do you practice any sort of like, what are they called? Affirmations, or like, do you talk to yourself in your head?
Yeah, absolutely. You asked me this on my podcast, actually. And I think my answer is different from when you asked me. So I have this journal that a friend of mine recommends called the Mind Journal. And it's a journal for guys. It was intended for guys, but I think it's great for everybody.
Yeah, take all these notes.
It like the first page has like all these emotions. It's like tired, angry, happy, sad, and you check off what you're feeling. And then it's got your 3 affirmations that you can write, your 3 gratitude things that you can write. But then it's got one that I had never seen in any other journal. It was called the Happy Hour. And each day you will write down what your happy hour for the day is going to be. And this is probably where this like whole walk and being by myself came from. And it can be, but it's something specific that you're going to do just for you. It can be go to the gym. It can be do yoga.
Does it include martinis?
Whatever. Yeah. So
Really
you know what most of mine were for the first like few months? I'm going to sit on the porch and I'm going to have a glass of wine and do the crossword puzzle. Because
that was your happy hour.
That was my happy hour. And I would look forward to that the whole day. And I love it. So that is how I would show myself love, is carve out something that's just for me every single day.
That's awesome. I love that.
I love that too. Okay, so we gotta go. There's so many directions we can go here.
I know.
But I do want Connie. We don't have to spend much time talking about it, but Connie and I were. She just met you for the first time today. Except for I brag about you all the time.
You do. I know.
I feel like I know you.
Yes.
But
I cannot believe you haven't met. We
can't
run in
either.
all the same circles. Like
I
friends.
see your billboard as I drive by I-15 all the time.
Photoshop makes even this look good.
And I don't know. We can cut this out. If we can't use this, say it after this. But Connie's biggest fear. So update is I recently had a breast lift and had a smaller augmentation or a smaller implant put in. And Connie was so scared. She was more nervous than like Justin didn't mind. No one cared. And Connie's like, when she saw me, she's like, oh, good. I was so nervous you weren't going to have boobs anymore.
I know. It's like, it sounded a lot smaller than it looks.
Yes. Anyways, well, let's take a break. And when we come back, I actually want you to tell your story. Like where you came from. Where did you grow up? How did you get into plastic surgery?
Absolutely.
Welcome back from the break. We have Dr. Nicolas Howland in the house today, and we have been having the most fascinating conversation about growth, self-healing, improvement. But we want to know, Dr. Howland, where did it all start? Tell us your story.
Where are you from?
That was a wild first part. It went places I didn't expect.
Well, that's what we do here on the Wild Rose podcast.
So I grew up right here in Utah. I'm from Murray, Utah, born and raised. Parents raised us here. I guess there's a little stint in Texas, but Murray, Utah, and
So what high school is that?
Murray High.
Murray High.
I was a Spartan. My parents divorced when I was 16. Grew up very LDS. Served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for 2 years in Russia.
Russia?
Mm-hmm. Duh.
Dang, how was that?
Amazing. It was. I served in St. Petersburg, Russia from 2001 to 2003, and loved it. Honestly, one of the greatest experiences of my life. It really taught me how to work hard, how to be focused, and I mean, I needed those years. I actually wasn't gonna go on a mission, and all of my friends were leaving, and I knew I wanted to go to medical school and I wanted to become a doctor, and I was like, oh, this is just like gonna get in the way, and I'm gonna
set you back 2 years.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be a doctor fast enough, and so I did a semester at the University of Utah, and I had this whole speech worked up to tell my mom, like, I'm not going, and because if you grow up in Utah, the vast majority of the population is LDS or Mormon. And if you don't serve a mission, especially as a young man, you're kind of looked at as, well, he must not be worthy.
Yep.
It's not like a question of, oh, maybe he didn't want to go or he has other things. It's, oh, he must have slept with his girlfriend or done something unworthy to not be able to go. So it's kind of like, at least when I was growing, it was like social suicide to not go on a mission. And it was even more embarrassing for the parents because what did you do that your kids cannot go?
Yeah.
So I was...
And a lot of kids will go just so that their parents don't have to go through that.
Absolutely. So I was terrified to go tell my mom that I had decided I wasn't going to go. And so I remember vividly, I walk up to her room and I'm just like shaking and I was like, Mom, I'm not going. I'm not doing it. And my mom was just like, you don't have to, sweetie. It's your decision.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And then I go down to my bedroom like, God damn it. That didn't work. Yeah. So my mom tells me it's okay. And that, I don't know if it was like mom reverse psychology magic or what, but
you weren't expecting that.
I was not expecting it. And so that made me realize, okay, I better actually decide what I want to do. And I ended up deciding to go. And so fast forward, I come home from a mission and I moved in with Jimmy Rex at an apartment down in Orem, Utah.
So you guys go way back.
Oh, we've been best friends since 6th grade.
Oh my gosh.
And I was already at the University of Utah. He had an apartment in Orem and he had convinced me, like, just come stay with me. Let's transfer you to BYU. And so I'm like, oh yeah, sure, let's do it, man. So I moved down there and I look into the honor code thing and I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. No girls in my bedroom? No, can't do that. And so I stayed at the University of Utah and I was taking a full load of classes. So I would get up every day, commute to the University of Utah.
From Orem.
That's
From
nuts.
Orem.
That's what, an hour drive?
About an hour drive. And then I would drive back, spend a few hours hanging out with the guys. And I did that 5 days a week.
Dang.
And then...
This is before electric cars?
Yes, exactly. Before electric cars were all that. And finally, I only lasted about a year before I was like, I can't do this. But I got married shortly after, and I was married from 2004. Yeah, 2004. And we were married for about 10 years. And 2 kids. I've got a daughter and I've got a son. My daughter's 16. My son is 11. So I was married when I went to medical school. We spent 10 years in Houston, Texas for medical school and for residency training. And with about 2 years left of residency, we went through divorce. My ex-wife moved here to Utah and I had 2 years left. And that was, I've talked about this on my podcast in the past, but it was, you kind of hear that. And I think a lot of people immediately are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she would take the kids away. Well, it was a joint decision. Like I knew I was always going to come back here and it was a hard decision, but it was this joint decision that she was going to come back here. So for 2 years I spent, I would get a plane ticket on a Friday once a month, come out here, see the kids on Saturday, go back to Houston on Sunday. And so my kids were young, right? My daughter was 7, 8. My son was 4 and 5. And every time we were visiting, they would ask me, well, how many more trips, Dad, until you're done, until you're back here?
This is probably one of the busiest times in your medical school, right?
When I say like it was once a month and then like once a year I would get to come have like a week or 2.
Wow.
And so it was 2 really difficult years. When I graduated residency, everybody gives a speech when they finish graduating. And my kids came down, my parents came down, and that was kind of a pinnacle of my parenting life. At that speech, I got to look at my kids and say, no more trips.
Oh.
Okay.
So sweet.
Oh, I bet they're so happy.
They were ecstatic for Dad to finally be present and be there. And that's been one of the hardest decisions I think I've ever made in my life. Mm-hmm. And I've had to wrestle with that a lot. I've had feelings that I chose a career over my kids that I had to deal with and that I had to overcome. And I know that this was for them. Mm-hmm. But those have been difficult things that I've had to reconcile. And and training. So med school and training was all plastic surgery.
Did you always know that? So you always knew you were going to go into the medical field, but did you,
Always knew that.
what got you into plastic surgery?
ADD,
Really?
which sounds
I was
silly.
not expecting you to say
That's
that.
why I'm laughing. I was not expecting that.
So I followed around a orthopedic surgeon and a bariatric surgeon.
What's a bariatric?
So they do like gastric bypass, weight
Okay.
loss surgeries. And so the orthopedic surgeon, after like 3 days, I watched him do 10 ACL repairs, and I was bored out of my mind. Like, this is the same thing every day. And then the bariatric surgeon was saying like 10 gastric bypasses, and I was like, you guys do the same thing every day. I don't think I can do this. And maybe I don't want to be a surgeon. And plastic surgery was the first field that I found where everything was just totally unique. Like, I could do 10 breast dogs in a day, and they would all be completely unique and different. So that kept my attention. So it was ADT that
Makes
brought
sense.
me to plastic surgery. But I think it's the artistic component of plastic surgery that excites me as well. It's not just here's the surgery, here's how you do it every single time. It's you have to bring in an artistic element with every single patient.
You feel like that's like an artistic outlet for you on top of.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I had to plastic surgery. I quickly had to change and make my views on it a little bit unique. So when I was in medical school, I was still a member of the church. So fun fact about me, I've been excommunicated from the Mormon Church twice. So, well, the first time I was devastated, and it was right before I got married, and I went straight to Deseret Book, and I thought I'm gonna find a book on excommunication and how to get through it, and there was nothing, and I was convinced my life purpose was to write a book on excommunication, the process, and then how to come back and live. I have all these notes from this book I was gonna write.
So wait, from the time that you were excommunicated, did you know that you wanted to work and get back?
That first time, yes.
Okay.
And I did. I got married. We took all these steps. I got rebaptized by my father-in-law. And we went through the temple right after my daughter was born. And I was hardcore, back in, fully in. And then right before my divorce, go through a second excommunication. And we had kind of, my wife and I at the time, we had kind of fallen away from the church a little bit. And so with that second one, the first thing I did is I went back to church. And I remember sitting in church next to this family who I had known for years. And we had been friends with for years. And this is the way I remember it. It might have been completely different, but this is the way it has always been in my mind. One of them whispered something to the other, either the husband or the wife, and they got up and they moved their whole family.
What?
And left me just kind of alone in the pew. And so I'm kind of crushed a little bit, and I wait a few minutes, and I knew I was going to start crying if I sat there. And so I went out to my car and I cried for about 20 minutes. And then I said, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not fighting for this anymore. But I also said, I'm not going to be the guy who leaves the church because somebody offended me. And so I spent years kind of really trying to dive into what I believed, why I believed it, and who I was. And that took, we do a whole other podcast on that.
Yeah, we might have to.
But
because I want to know all of that too.
The reason I tell you that story is so when I was a fourth year med student, I had decided to go into plastic surgery. I was still very LDS. I was like the gospel doctrine teacher. And we went out to dinner, and one of the counselors in the bishopric was there. And he says, well, what are you going into? I said, I'm going to plastic surgery. And he says, oh, what a shame. And I was like, what? I was like, what? And he says, oh, it's just so sad that our healthcare has become what it is, that you have to go into such a vain and terrible profession in order to make a living. And I'm like, excuse me, sir, I like plastic surgery. And that really changed my perception, though. And I realized then that a lot of people still have shame attached to plastic surgery. Because for me, I've never seen plastic surgery as vanity. And I said that on a plastic surgery podcast once, and this lady was like, no, you don't understand. How can you not see plastic surgery as vanity? Because I don't. I think plastic surgery, when it's done for the right reasons, is one of the most self-empowering things that you can do for yourself. Mm-hmm. And so my approach is a little bit different than most surgeons. I don't impose my idea of beauty on my patients. I think there's a lot of surgeons out there who they think 500cc implants look great, and so most of their patients get 500cc implants. For me, people will sit in my office and they'll ask, well, what do I need done? And my answer is nothing. Nobody needs plastic surgery, which is a terrible business model for a plastic surgeon, by the way. But I said, now tell me what bothers you. Tell me kind of what you're struggling with, and I will help you. I've got a whole tool bag of things that I can help you with, and we can get you to what you want. Because that's where it becomes a thing of empowerment. Mm-hmm. And you wanted me to share my ideas of beauty. Mm-hmm. Like, beauty for me is empowerment. Mm-hmm. Plastic surgery will not change you as an individual. You have to change you. But it can certainly help you feel better externally about the work that you're doing internally. And that's probably the best compliment I've ever gotten from a patient, is she had gone through a terrible relationship, gotten out of a relationship, done all this work to lose all this weight, and she had all this extra skin, and we finally did a lift, and we took off all the skin, and she had been going to therapy and working on herself, and at her 3-month visit, she's just like sobbing, and I said, what is going on? And she says, I finally see on the outside how I feel on the inside. Oh, wow. And
you're like, that's why I do this.
Yeah, that for me, oh my gosh. And she came on my podcast and told this incredible story, but that's what beauty is.
Yeah. Well, and they always, and I truly believe that, not only just from a spiritual, from a self-worth, but also, like, beauty does start from the inside. You could spend thousands of dollars on your body and your face and your hair, but if you don't feel good about yourself, then you'll never shine.
Yeah,
it's true. Or how many beautiful women or men have you met and thought, oh my gosh, they're like so gorgeous, and then they start talking and you're like, oh, they're horrible, their energy is terrible, and then it makes them really ugly really fast. Right? So that comes from within, right? So
when I just remember, I've always been really comfortable in my skin and really confident. And after kids, everything just changed. Like, I still wanted to express myself the way that I did in the past, but it was like I wanted to make little tweaks to my body so I could express myself how I used to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of my good friends is, I guess, would be considered like a prominent feminist, right? And she runs this in a very strong, woman-empowered world. And she had a breast augmentation after her kids. And she did it because, this is from her, she lost all of her breast tissue from pregnancy, and she would walk these kids. She's like, I don't feel like a woman anymore. I feel like I'm the little sister, or just there's no femininity here at all. And so that's why she got it. And she had all of these people in her community just kind of coming after her. I can't believe you got a breast augmentation. Plastic surgery is such a vain thing, is such a patriarchal thing. And she's like, whoa. This was not for any man. This was not for anybody else. This was for me, so that I could feel more feminine. And there's nothing more feminine than that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Don't you feel like it's so crazy that people feel like they have the right to like impose their opinions on somebody else's for something like that they're just, I mean, what if it was a vain thing? Or what if she's just, it obviously wasn't. But like,
even if it was, why does that matter?
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Even if it was, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You can't define.
Like, does it change your life?
Right.
If she gets her boobs done? No.
Not at all.
I don't get that. I don't get why people, I don't know.
Because they're not happy with themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
The other cool thing that Dr. Nicolas Howland, I still always throw in the doctor. And like, am I your friend or am I your
call
patient?
me.
Right? Nick is you've helped a lot of people in the LGBTQ community too. And, we're all allies in the room, and I don't know if you want to share anything about that, but that's also something that made me admire you. Like, oh, because I've heard when I was shopping for a doctor and going to consultations, I had heard that you had helped. You've helped the community a lot, and I was like, oh, I want to go see that doctor.
It was unexpected. When I came out here, that wasn't intended to be part of my practice. I had done a lot of it in my training, but it wasn't. I didn't plan on it being a part of my practice at all. And I had a patient come in who had gotten an augmentation in Thailand, and her implants had just completely bottomed out. They were sitting on her stomach, basically. And she said, "Will you fix this?" Sure. And she's crying in my office. She's like, "You will?" I said, "Well, yeah, why not?" And she says, "I've been to 6 plastic surgeons in the state. 3 of them said, I don't operate on your kind. And 3 of them said it's against my religion." And I don't know who those 6 people were. I don't know if she embellished the story at all, but I was just like, no, I will help. And I had a lot of experiences like that, though, that really made me see that community just needs people to love them. I took my kids to the first, it was technically the second Love Loud concert that Dan Reynolds and his group put on. And it was at Rice-Eccles Stadium. It was, to this day, one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life. But I went there with my kids, and it was like this all-day thing. And I had multiple people reaching out to me on Facebook and Instagram, like, "I can't believe you're taking your kids to this. This is, like, why would you expose them to this environment?" And I'm like, I'm taking my kids to a concert. And then the whole concert, Dan Reynolds and Tyler Glenn and everybody else at this concert is just talking about how it's just love. Love is love. And we need love. And it was the greatest lesson my kids had ever gotten. They still talk about that to this day. And they love going to the Love Loud concerts. I have a tattoo from one of my patients on my forearm here, who is a non-binary trans patient. And we did a mastectomy for them. And they went through some difficult bullying experiences. And their mom reached out and said, "Hey, this person, they're opening a tattoo shop. Any help would be appreciated." And that was I knew it. I knew that was the first thing that I wanted to do. So one of my nurses got a tattoo from them. I got a tattoo from them. And I'll share one other experience I had, which is a girl that I was really close with. I got to be there when she she wasn't really coming out to her mom, but she was expressing her feelings to her mom. She had said, "I've really been uncomfortable with my breasts for years, and I don't know that I like them, and I don't know." She still wasn't exactly sure where she was, whether she wanted to fully transition, but she just expressing these feelings to her mom. And her mom was like, well, what do I call you? Like, I don't know who you are or what this means. And she just looked at her and said, I'm just me. And I had this realization at the time that they don't need us to understand them, right? I will never understand the thoughts that somebody who is trans has, because I have never experienced that. But that's not what they're asking for. They're just asking for you to love them, to recognize them as a human being. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's easy to do. I don't have to understand you, but I can love the shit out of you.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And I think that it's really empowering, especially with being a leader in the medical field. How do you say that?
Yeah.
In the medical field. Especially with the community being under attack right now, it's really amazing to see, doctors, other leaders stepping up and showing support and love. Because at the end of the day, when I hear you say that and I hear about your friend's story, it's like she knows her soul. She knows who she is, and it's not reflecting like who she is. And she wants that. That's empowerment, right?
Yeah.
Is to be able to express to express who you are, because our soul, we could be born into any body, but our soul is who we are.
Yeah. Well, the community needs people out there also as a champion for what's actually happening, because what's happening gets misconstrued by the media for whatever purpose or gain either side wants to push.
Yeah.
Like, I get people all the time who hear that I will do transgender surgery and they think I'm out here doing sex change operations for 12-year-olds, and because that's been portrayed in the media. And I'm like, guys, that doesn't happen. Like, let me tell you what's actually happening, and rather than just what you heard on some Facebook post you saw.
Right. Yeah. Which is curated for different audiences. Like
Exactly.
I'm so over the media. I wish I could take it all away from my kids. But that's not the world we live in. But thank you so much for coming on the Wild Rose podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you guys for having me. Connie,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
It's so lovely to finally meet you.
We didn't get to talk about you guys much at all.
Well, no, we brought you here to talk about you. Where can everyone find you?
So my practice is in Draper, Utah. Howland Plastic Surgery. I'm under the umbrella of Premier Plastic Surgery. Just Instagram's the easiest. Dr. Nicolas Howland. I'm also on TikTok for better or worse. I don't dance. I cannot dance, so I don't dance. But we post some funny videos. So.
Yeah, I loved the one that came out yesterday with the
From The Office.
Yeah, from The Office. But thank you so much. Do you have any last?
No, I was just going to say you do beautiful work. I know lots of my friends have gone to you. They're beautiful. You're very, very talented.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And you're an incredible human being.
Thank you.
And a great friend.
I agree with you.
All right. Well, do you want to do the Be You Stay Wild with us?
Yeah.
All right. Again, thank you to
Absolutely.
thank you to everyone who listens and follows us. We'll include where you can find Dr. Nicolas Howland in the notes of the show. But don't forget,
Be you, stay wild.